water, metal, or earth. And the 5 elements that you see on my book here, style of Qigong I teach is based upon the 5 elements. So each of us is a certain typology, which then tells us different things about our personality, as well as potential diseases that may arise if we deviate from our personality type, okay? So, for some people, some foods may be healthy, and for other people, it may create more disease. So, when people try to use the food pyramid, it's not accurate because I don't know about you, but I don't quite fit into a food pyramid. And my wife is always saying that she's going to put me in a box. My problem is my arms and my legs fall out of the box, and so she can't keep me contained. So we're going to talk about Chinese nutrition, also the top 5 diseases plaguing Americans and foods that can help. So we're going to talk about the diseases that come up, but also foods that will help to change the process of that disease. And then we're going to give 3 remedies for those specific illnesses. So what is Qigong? Qigong is a 5,000-year-old practice. By the way, how many people have heard of Qigong? Okay, almost everybody here. That's fantastic. Some talks I go to, not that many people know what it is. So anyway, so it's a 5,000-year-old practice. And I say it's the root, actually, of Chinese medicine because ancient sages, thousands of years ago, were so in tune with nature, minus the ego, that they were in tune with the interactions of the human body and so aware of how these organs function. Because we understand how the organs function according to science, but in Chinese medicine, they have a much, much greater functionality. And according to Chinese medicine, the leading cause of death and disease is negative emotions. It's not that emotions are bad. It's when they're not expressed appropriately, or even worse, not expressed at all. Or even worse than that, some of the worst autoimmune diseases that I see, like Lyme disease and lupus, common thread is that the person doesn't even know what anger is. Can't even identify with anger. So the body says, okay, guess what? We're going to show you anyways. We're going to show you as a symptom or a sign, and this is where this inflammation comes up. So there's 3 regulations of Qigong, and which is physical posture, which is referred to as the Wu Ji posture. And this Wu Ji posture is mimicking that of nature. So in Chinese philosophy, Taoist philosophy, they believe that the Tao is Wu Ji. God is one explanation of Wu Ji, but something that great cannot be explained. So when a person stands in Wu Ji posture or sits in Wu Ji posture, what they're doing is they're properly aligning all the bones, the lower lumbar, the thoracic, and the cervical spine. Nothing is locked. The knees are slightly bent. The sacrum rolls underneath, and by rolling the sacrum underneath, there's an acupuncture point right opposite the belly button, in between the left and right kidney, called the gate of fire. So there's a proper mixture of fire and water, because the kidneys relate to water, that produces the steam, which is the qi that circulates around the body. So, and then from there, we place the tip of the tongue on the roof of the mouth behind the teeth. And I'm telling you this now, but we're going to review this when we go to do our practice in a little bit, or a little bit later on. Tip of the tongue behind the teeth, as I say the letter N, and the whole reason for that is to connect 2 major acupuncture vessels of the body. And relax the shoulders. And then the next regulation is breath. So if you watch a newborn baby, he or she will breathe into their abdomen. You watch most adults, they breathe into their chest. The problem with that is that deep abdominal breathing, it's not just Chinese philosophy, Ayurvedic medicine, there's all types of other modalities that talk about the importance of abdominal breathing. And when I talk about abdominal breathing, I'm not just talking about pushing the abdomen out, I'm talking about the sides also going out and the back going out. So front, back, left and right sides, everything expands. And this is abdominal breathing. If you watch a newborn baby, he or she will breathe into his or her stomach. You watch the abdomen rise and decline. You watch adults, and most of us don't. Dietary, poor diet, lifestyle habits, but also emotional trauma and stress in their life. And what's funny is that when people come in and, I'm doing the Q&A, and like I tell them, if I still see the line or feature on your face, it means the trauma is still there. Like you could tell if somebody's had a broken heart just by looking at their nose. So simple. And then you'll talk to them, and then they'll say, oh, what is that, Mark? It's a little line that crosses the nose here. And it doesn't have to be distinct, it can be very faint. And you talk to them, they'll say, yeah, that was like 20 years ago though. We're like, well, it's still somewhere in your tissues. Okay? And the mind intent, they say that the imagination leads the mind and the mind leads the smooth flow of the chi. And if you have a hard time understanding or conceiving what chi is, just think of it in terms of blood or fluids. They have a saying that the blood contains the chi, and then the blood contains the chi, and the chi moves the blood around the body. Okay, so mind intent is so powerful. So what are the 5 elements? These are the 5 phases of transformation. And what I love about the 5 elements is that it describes so much. I mean, it goes so deep. It's actually, the 5 elements is actually the extension of yin and yang theory. And these 5 phases of energy evolution, this cycle here is referred to as the creative cycle. And we actually see this cycle in our seasons. So right now, we're in the Indian summer months, right? So what do we see? Pumpkin, right? It's not just to carve, it's to eat.
Not just.
Because during this time of year, the spleen and the pancreas and the stomach are more prone to disease. There's an ancient textbook called The Yellow Emperor's Classic of Difficulties, and they were talking about diseases that arise when people eat not only out of season, but when seasons don't conduct themselves the way they're supposed to, like the drought that we have, for example. And now what we're seeing is in LA and in the Silicon Valley there, we're seeing illnesses come up that are as a result of the seasons not being in season. So what I love about 5 element theory is that it encompasses so much. So the earth element relates to the stomach, spleen, and pancreas, and the Indian summer months. An earth typology is somebody that is very grounded when they're in balance. That is, they're very grounded. They make great peacemakers. I say that earth typologies would work really good in HR, for example, because they can see both sides of the situation. Metal types maybe not quite as much. They're more sharp and cutting. But anyways, we'll talk about that more later. But the metal element relates to the lungs and the large intestine, colon, and skin. Connected to the seasons of fall and autumn. And from there we go into the water phase. So the water connects to the kidneys and the urinary bladder, the skeletal system, reproductive system. All the major glands in the body are as a result of this kidney chi. Foods that is connected into the winter. And then in the spring months is the wood element, and this is where the liver and gallbladder are more prone to disease. And so you'd be surprised if you pay attention, especially I would think down here, as to what foods are present are there because those organs are weaker. And those foods that are present during this certain, like right now, like the pumpkin, the root vegetables that are present, are there to help get you ready for winter, to help to prepare you in this cycle. So when people eat foods that are out of season, then the problem with that is that if your constitution is strong, you probably won't notice a difference. But if you have any type of febrile disease, then the chances of you exacerbating that disease actually will increase. You actually increase the opportunity for your immune system to not function like it was designed to. Now the fire element is related to the heart, the pericardium, the small intestine, and is related to the summer months. So I just going to use, for example, watermelon is a summer vegetable. It's a summer vegetable, is a summer fruit. So summer fruit, the reason why is because it's cooling in nature. Its energetic properties are cooling because it's summer heat. And if you go to the Center of Disease Control's website, more heart attacks happen in the summer months. So the heart doesn't like heat, summer heat. The spleen doesn't like dampness, damp conditions. The lungs don't like dryness. The kidneys don't like cold. And then the springtime, the liver dislikes just like wind. And what's interesting is that each of these 5 elements, which relates to back into the internal organs, the seasons, also connect to the different flavors as well. So the heart element, bitter foods benefit the heart. Earth element, sweet foods benefit the heart, but I say that with caution because it's not sugar sweet. But what happens is, because sugar is in everything, you buy non-fat yogurt, organic non-fat Greek yogurt, you still have to read the label. It's ridiculous because they'll offset the non-fat with sugar. So when your body is craving something sweet, it's your body's way of saying, listen to me, there's something going on here. And your spleen has so many functions besides taking the food and transporting and transforming it up to the chest to be formed into blood. It does things that we take for granted, like it keeps the blood within the blood vessels. It does other things, like it helps to keep the organs in place. So if you or anybody you know has ever had a prolapse of the uterus, a prolapse of the anus, they don't just fall out by themselves. Yes, there's gravity, but a lot of people think that, God put them there, so they're just supposed to stick there. Well, no, I'm here to tell you, no. There's different components, like of the psoas muscle. There's certain parts of the psoas muscle that does help to support. But if your organs are falling out of place, chances are before they fell out of place, you were craving sweet first and maybe indulging in those sweets. So the body's always talking to us. So what we do is we use food as medicine, not just to feed the body, it's medicine. And when you start to know this stuff, then what happens is when you cook or when you're eating, you start to plan according to what you need. And then you do the Qigong practices to allow yourself to become more sensitive to your body, so you have a deeper understanding as to what you need. So like in my book here, we talk about all the movements and how to do the movements, but also I give people a basic, very foundational introduction to Chinese philosophy, Chinese medicine, yin yang theory, 5-element theory, what the functions of the organs are, what dysfunctions look like, all for the purpose of empowering people to be able to help to ward off disease before disease sets in. And the Yellow Emperor, the Yellow Emperor's classic with difficulties, they have a saying that to fight disease after it's set in, because we're all about trying to prevent disease before it sets in, but to fight disease after it's set in is like digging a well after one's become thirsty, or like forging one's weapons after they've already engaged in battle. Wouldn't that be too late? So why wait? Why wait? So the bitter foods help to benefit the heart. The sweet, so what I'm talking about is naturally sweet, like the pumpkin, the root vegetables. Lean meat actually is sweet in nature. Basmati rice, oats, those types of things are sweet in nature, but naturally sweet. So it's not only sweet, but it's also bland. So foods that are bland as well too. And if you talk to people that are really sick, let's say that are recovering from chemotherapy or radiation, we make congee, soupy rice. Why do we make the soupy rice? Because the digestive system loves it, and it's easy for the person to assimilate and then to help to build the body's constitution back up. So the metal element for the lungs, it likes things that are pungent. So pungent would be like your garlic, your ginger, your cinnamon, onions, those types of things. They help to disperse, they help to move qi in the body. For the kidneys, then we have foods that are salty. Not just talking table salt, but it's also foods like black beans, azuki beans, seaweed, having a little bit of seaweed. Those little packages of seaweed are great. Our dog loves the stuff. It's really good for them too. The wood element likes things that are, the liver and gallbladder likes things that are sour. But again, these are all in moderation. Because I was teaching a Foundations of Chinese Medicine class, and we were talking about this stuff, and then the next thing you know, I see all my students with water bottles with pure lime juice. And they're like, why am I getting acid reflux for it? I'm like, oh my God, it's because you went too far. You don't need that much. I always recommend to people, a good way to start off your day is you start off your day with a small glass of hot water and lemon juice. Real lemons, not the plastic one. Half a lemon. Yeah, sour is for the liver. And if you tend to have high cholesterol, or if you want to, or if you have gallstones or kidney stones, because kidney and gallstones are a form of cholesterol, add a half a teaspoon of coconut oil to that hot water and lemon juice.
Can we ask a question?
Sure.
Is lime as good as liver?
You know, it has a little bit, you know, that's a very good question. It has similar energetic properties, but what you'll see is that foods that are also the same color as these elements, for example, so green, so we tell people, yeah, if you could have lime juice instead, that'd be better. For us, it seems like we have a hard time finding good limes that are nice and juicy. But yeah, you know, like eating foods that are red in nature or purple, eating foods that are yellow or orange will benefit. So you could actually use this 5-element theory. It's such an easy theory when you break it down to eat according to these different organs. And also during certain times of the day, certain organs are more active. So between 7 and 11 a.m., guess what? Your stomach and spleen are most active. So your largest meal of the day should be breakfast. And it should be a warm breakfast, not a cold and raw breakfast. So some people could have the cold raw diet, because I get this question, like, Chris, you know, what about the cold raw diet? And if your constitution can handle it, great. But if you think of it from a science point of view, your body operates at what? 98.5 degrees. If you take something from the refrigerator, on average it's 54, 55 degrees. So when you put it into your stomach has to heat it up to 98.5 degrees to be able to assimilate it, which creates inflammation. So we want to give this stomach, this earth element, this mother element, a break and not make it work so hard. And the great thing about starting off your morning before you have your coffee or tea is by having the hot water and lemon juice, is that it starts to kickstart the liver and gallbladder secreting bile into the stomach to start your digestive process for the day. And you'll notice that as the day goes on, then what will happen is that you digest a lot easier. And you notice when in Persian culture, there's a lot of culture. Persian culture, Asian culture, what do? They give you tea, right, before the meal or after the meal. Like in Persian culture, they have the tea, the really good tasting tea after the meal, right, to help you to digest. So each of us is a certain personality type, and it's the deviation from that personality type that indicates disease. So sorry if you can't see this that good, but so the fire type is the lover and the consciousness. And the fire typology, the great thing about them when they're in balance is, yes, they express with the heart. They're like the life of the party. You know, they go to a party and everybody wants to hang around with them because they're funny and everything. But just like fire, they burn bright, and then what happens? They burn out. When they deviate from their typology, then what happens is that they become exposed, they become vulnerable, they lack boundaries with people and situations. They end up with a broken heart. Their challenges as they get older are issues with the veins and the blood vessels and the arteries. So what we want to do is we want to eat foods, we want to take herbs that help keep us within our constitutional type, and also to bring forth the best part of that constitutional type, which is for the fire person, which is that warmth, which is the love, which is the compassion. Have you guys heard of heart math? Is it heart math? Heart math in the Santa Cruz Mountains. Have you guys heard of them? Yeah. Yeah, pretty amazing. For years, the science was saying that the consciousness was here in the brain, but what these group of scientists have proved, no, the consciousness is here. In Chinese medicine, they've said that all along. So the heart, the negative emotions that affect the heart are actually too much joy, mania. You can actually die of a heart attack from laughing too hard.
My dad died of a heart attack. He died laughing.
He died. Yeah, I was a judge a couple years ago. This didn't make sense to me because you hear all these things. Be happy. They even have a song. Don't worry, be happy. A couple years ago, as a judge at the UC Berkeley Chinese martial arts competition, I actually saw it. This young lady, 23 years old, just competed, won for the first time ever, gold. And when the judges called her up to the ring, The whole family jumped up and started cheering, and her father had a severe heart attack right on the scene, and it was horrible. But yeah, so then it started to make sense. So the heart is the center of the consciousness, of our consciousness. So it dictates how much of an emotion is going to be expressed and suppressed. And if you think of it, all the emotions, whether it's sorrow, whether it's fear, whether it's anger, that it affects the heart first, and then it attacks a specific organ.
Yes.
Sure.
Despair may be the opposite of ecstatic joy. Would that be equally harmful, the two extremes?
The two extremes, yeah, so because we don't want to go to the extremes.
Life in the middle.
It's in the right, we want the balance that's in the middle. And if you think about it, like if you talk about the two extremes, if you have a laughing attack at something, what's the first thing you do? Right? If you've lost somebody, an animal has died or has run away, you hear people sigh. That sighing is not by accident. Right? So the despair, right? The grief. So the heart is trying to regain that balance again. And I really do believe also that people could die of a broken heart. Johnny Cash is a fine example. He died right after his wife died. Not too long after. Mm-hmm. So the earth type is the provider, the diplomat. We can tell the earth type because they have a square face. Heart people have a heart face, or fire people have like a heart or diamond face. So each typology has a certain facial shape that shows what the personality type is. So the provider, the diplomat, they're great for standing up for righteous causes. Earth people are really good about being balanced, helping to calm a situation. And when they are in balance and their digestive system is strong, their muscles are also strong. When they're out of balance, then earth people tend to worry too much, over-intellectualize too much, they think too much. They become very stubborn and controlling because they feel like the people are trying to take advantage of them. They find themselves being stuck in their head a lot. So believe it or not, there's foods you could eat and there's herbs you could take that actually, which are plant-based that you could actually utilize, and Qigong practices which you can actually utilize in order to help to bring the earth type back into balance. The metal type is the judge, the alchemist. So metal types, I think of them as like, they're very proper, like they love elegance. They dress very nice. My priest's mom is a metal type, and she has really great taste in clothes and shoes. These shoes are outrageously expensive though, but that's a metal type. So they like things in proper order. They're not very good though at showing their emotions, especially grief or sadness. They may show other emotions, but because metal, if you think about it, it's like a shield. And the lungs in Chinese medicine are considered the most superficial organ of the body because of their relationship to the skin and also their relationship to the nose. And so it contains within itself this energetic field called the Wei Qi. And the Wei Qi is like an energetic bubble that resides around all of us. And there's 3 levels of Wei Qi. There's a physical, there's a mental, emotional, then there's the spiritual. And I have some people say, well, we have no Wei Qi. We don't walk around with no bubble. And at some level, you have experienced the Wei Qi. Have you ever been standing in a line somewhere and somebody walks up behind you, you don't see them or hear them, but you feel them? Or sitting at a stoplight and you feel somebody staring at you from 3 or 4 car lanes over? That's somebody tapping into that Wei Qi. That's not by accident that that's happening. So metal people, they have to be careful because they like perfection, and that perfection could actually create more despair for them because the emotions that affect the lungs are the grief, the loss, the despair. The water type is the sage and the survivor. So water people, their positive attributes are having strong willpower. Like, it's going to be hard to budge a water type if they're in balance, because once they make a decision on something, then it's going to be hard to move them. The sage, so they tend to be like to study and enlighten themselves when they're in balance. When they're out of balance, then what happens is that they freeze, right? Or they become they become stuck, which starts to indicate and starts to create disease. The wood type, the visionary and the warrior, the positive attribute about wood types, I'm a wood type, is that wood people are great leaders, managers. And you know, when we're talking about these typologies and our positive attributes about these typologies, it's embracing who you are within your element type. So for the longest time, before I started practicing Chinese medicine, you know, I was a butcher for 21 years. When I finally got a chance, a meat manager for most of the time, and when I got a chance to get into a clinic north of San Jose, you know, at the time I was a single father of 2 kids and a meat manager managing these. I'm sorry, but some of these guys are a bunch of knuckleheads, and I didn't know how I was going to go from doing that to healing people. It didn't make any sense. But how it's helped me in my practice, though, is that the fascia, I know what it smells like, tastes like, looks like, disease, healthy, all the insertion points, I can visualize it still. So when I'm working with somebody, I can still visualize it, because human anatomy and animal anatomy, you know, it's pretty close. It's pretty close. So yeah, so at one point I wasn't embracing this wood typology. So we have about 15 practitioners at our office in San Jose, or staff members. And I used to say, you know, because sometimes you think that people that are doing this healing work are enlightened. And I'm here to say most of us are not. And so, you know, it's almost like herding cats, right? And so I'd say to myself, I can't believe, you know, I hate it when I'm being put in the position where I have to be a hammer, but it's really part of my typology. It's who I am. This is who I am. The deviation of the wood type, though, so is that they tend to use anger inappropriately, or they end up being controlling. Then they start having problems with their eyes. They start having problems with their digestive system. They may have problems with their nerves or their tendons and ligaments. And so what happens is that when they deviate from the typology, then it starts to show up as disease. Now, anger is a positive emotion if it's used appropriately to fight for a good cause, to stand up for somebody. Anger becomes destructive when you're trying to control people, when you're blowing up at people. I had a gal there in Silicon Valley there. She was married to a very high-profile person, and she was planning her divorce, and she had everything in place. She had her attorneys, she had all of her health practitioners, psychiatrists, etc., everything in place, because she was going to control how this divorce was going to go. But unfortunately, you cannot control human emotions and people's reactions to human emotions. You could have everything on the outside set up all you want. So anyways, it backfired. And boy, she was really angry. And in fact, one time, because sometimes I have interns that come in, she didn't want the intern in there, which is fine. It's her choice. But our front desk gal, who was this past Miss California, Jessica Carmack, she was working with us at the time, and she said, "Oh, so-and-so didn't go into intern today." And Parisa said, "Yeah, you know, she didn't want her to come in." And the gal was walking out, and she caught the tail end of it. She just jumped down Jessa's throat. Now, luckily, Jessa is a strong, secure young woman that was able to stand her ground with her in a very appropriate manner. But anyways, in this workshop I was teaching on Chinese face reading, the same client was there in the class. She said, "You know, you talk like anger is a bad thing, and I have all these books I want you to read that that shows that anger is not that bad." And I said, "No, like seriously, if it helps you to create change in the world, to get yourself out of a bad situation, that's when it's positive. But if you're lashing out at people, you're blowing up at people, you're becoming violent, have road rage or whatever, it's no longer serving you." Or even worse, if it starts to create disease or depression when the anger turns in, then it's no longer serving you. So anyway, each one of us is a certain element type, and maybe if we have another time we could go into those personality types more, because that's really a fun class to figure out who we all are and how to apply it to our overall health.